He has been called the sleeping prophet, a man of miracles, a seer, a mystic. His work is known around the globe. Hundreds of books have explored his amazing psychic gift. From medical diagnoses to predicting social change, Edgar Cayce's legacy has touched the lives of millions. For 43 years of his adult life, Edgar Cayce gave psychic readings on more than 10,000 different subjects. Nearly everything imaginable is explored in his material: healing, business advice, the Bible, education, child-rearing, ancient civilizations, spirituality, prophecy of world events, and much more.
He looked like a country doctor, a simple person. You wouldn't turn around in the street if you saw him. But once you spoke to him, his voice was soft, it was direct, it was honest, it was embracing. And for me, I always saw a double pupil, a superimposure, as if he were looking through eternity. It made you a little uncomfortable at times because you wondered what you had done yesterday or said yesterday that you ought not to have said.
You know, growing up as a teenager with a psychic father is pretty rough.
My father was an unusually creative person. He was a fine photographer and was noted for his pictures, especially those of children. Edgar Cayce was an inventor of games. He loved to play all kinds of games and invented one called Pit, which is still on the market. He was a fine bowler. I never won a bowling game from him. He was a lousy golfer, but he loved to play. He was a great fisherman and fished everywhere that he had an opportunity. He was a man who loved to cook and did all kinds of things with preserves and berries of various kinds. He was a great gardener and loved to have exotic trees of all kinds around him. He was a man who was a fine Sunday school teacher, and he always had the largest classes in any church that he worked in.
Most of the people he never saw, many of them didn't even acknowledge the reading or pay for them. But if he was asked, he would give. I don't know what I would have done or where I would be without it.
I thought everybody's father gave readings. Didn't want a doctor, I wanted one of Dad's readings. I think he felt that he had the ability to help people, and that's what he wanted to do.
I often heard him say, do you suppose this is ever going to amount to anything?
The Cayce legacy presents a body of information so valuable that Edgar Cayce himself might have hesitated to predict their impact on contemporary society. 60 years ago, who could have known that one day terms such as meditation, auras, spiritual growth, reincarnation, and holism would become household words to millions? Cayce's organization, the Association for Research and Enlightenment Incorporated, ARE, has grown from its humble beginnings to an association with Edgar Cayce centers in countries around the world. Today, ARE consists of hundreds of educational activities and outreach programs, a children's camp, a multi-million-dollar publishing company, massage and health services, an historical foundation, and an affiliated university. For decades, the Cayce readings have stood the test of time, research, and extensive study. Just who was this man? A farmer boy who would become the most documented psychic of all time.
Curious happenings have impelled me to accept psychic phenomena as a natural experience of my everyday life. If I could sit down with you for a quiet conversation, I'd tell you this story. I was born and reared on a farm near Hopkinsville, Kentucky. Had a normal childhood in many respects. I saw, and still do, the glowing energy patterns that surround individuals. At a very early age, I remember telling my parents that I could also see and talk with my grandfather, who was deceased. Later, I developed the ability to sleep on my school books and retain a photographic memory of their entire contents. As the years passed, I met and fell in love with Gertrude, who would become my wife. Shortly thereafter, I developed a paralysis of the vocal cords and could scarcely speak above a whisper. Everything was tried, but no physician was able to locate a cause. The laryngitis persisted for months. As a last resort, hypnosis was tried. I put myself to sleep and was asked by a specialist to describe the problem. While asleep, I spoke normally, diagnosing the ailment and prescribing a simple treatment. After the recommendations were followed, I could speak normally for the first time in almost a year. The date was March 31st, 1901. That was the first reading. My life is a combination of literally thousands of such experiences. When it was discovered what had happened, many others began to want help. I soon learned that I could put myself into this unconscious state and give readings for anyone, regardless of where they were. Newspapers carried articles about my work, but it wasn't really until Gertrude was stricken with tuberculosis that the readings were brought home to me. Even with medical treatments, she continued to grow worse and was not expected to live. Finally, the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. A reading was given and recommended osteopathy, inhalants, enemas, dietary changes, and a prescription medication. The advice was followed, and Gertrude returned to perfectly normal health.
There hadn't been anything written about her. I guess, of course, she didn't do anything spectacular like Dad did, but she kept the family together and raised Julian and I guess that was the job. So,
another personal confirmation of the readings came when the family was faced with a second crisis involving their eldest son, Hugh Lynn, who had been playing in Edgar Cayce's photography studio.
The flash burns were so severe that the doctors felt that the eyes could not be saved without taking one of them out. Our family physician told me this, and it was then that I asked Edgar Cayce, my father, to give a reading. When the treatments he recommended were applied, in applications on the eyes, internal medicine, and a change of diet, the eyes began to heal. And in a matter of weeks, they removed the bandages, and I could see.
From that time on, Edgar Cayce immersed himself in giving readings. Each day, he would lie down on a couch, become comfortable, put his hands up to his forehead, and begin to pray. When he saw a brilliant flash of light, it was the signal that he could continue. He'd lower his hands to his stomach, and when his eyelids began to flutter, his wife would give him the appropriate suggestion. In this state, it seemed that he could answer any question or provide any type of information requested. According to the readings, each of us writes the story of our lives through our thoughts, our deeds, and our activities with one another. These accounts are stored in what the readings called the Akashic Records, and it was from this place, as well as from the minds of the individuals for whom he was giving the readings, that Edgar Cayce gathered his psychic information. Although the readings cover thousands of topics such as, who am I? Why am I here? And what is the purpose of life? Many can be categorized into subject areas such as health and healing, philosophy and reincarnation, dreams and dream interpretation, ESP and psychic phenomena, and spiritual growth, meditation, and prayer.
When I think of Edgar Cayce, I think of more than the psychic man, I think of health.
For all healing comes from the one source. Whether there is the application of foods, exercise, medicine, or even the knife, it is to bring to the consciousness of the forces within the body that aid in reproducing themselves, which is the awareness of creative or God forces.